There is a place where the grass grows so green it almost appears manufactured, where men have worn the same silhouette of coat for 200 years without ever calling it a costume, and where a woman's hat is never merely an accessory, but a declaration of alliance. This place doesn't exist on maps in a way other places do. You can drive to the postcode, pay for entry, stand on the lawn, and still never once set foot inside the room where conversations worth being part of are held. I'm speaking, of course, of Royal Ascot. I don't simply mean Ascot you have seen in magazines, though we will discuss those photographs carefully, for they contain codes far more precise than any written rule. I am speaking of Ascot as a social structure, Ascot as inheritance, Ascot as a living, breathing, clip-clopping sorting machine that has been operating since the age of wigs and candlelight, still functioning today with such smooth efficiency that most people don't even notice they are being sorted. Every year in the third week of June, approximately 300,000 people arrive at a racecourse in Berkshire, believing they're attending the same event. They're not. They're attending approximately 4 different events, stacked inside one another like those painted wooden dolls, each layer invisible to the one outside it, each layer convinced it has arrived at the center. What separates the person invited into the most prestigious rooms from the ones who simply purchase the most expensive ticket available? Can money truly buy its way into the inner crowd? Or is the person with the finest ticket merely a utility to the organization, a revenue source, funding the walls that exclude them? And what of bloodlines? Not merely the bloodlines of the horses thundering past the post, the bloodlines of the people watching them, and the unspoken pedigree required to truly belong. In this episode, we're going to walk through the invisible doors together. We will discuss what started this institution, who was allowed in then versus who is allowed in now, the secret language of the dress code that no website will ever fully explain, the bloodlines of the thoroughbreds themselves, the tradition of the wager, and finally, the 5-dimensional chess of signaling that you belong there without ever once trying to prove it. There will be opinions in this episode that some will find uncomfortable. There will be truths about how institutions preserve themselves that sound to the accustomed ear almost conspirational, though they're merely the accumulated logic of 3 centuries. There will also be beauty, because whatever else Ascot is, it is also beautiful. The hats are beautiful, the horses are beautiful. The terrible, magnificent, precise machinery of social calibration is, in its own way, a kind of art. I am the curated oracle. I observe so that you might see. Let's raise the curtain. This story begins with a woman on horseback, Queen Anne, the last of the stewards, a passionate equestrian who spoke more fluently to horses than most of her courtiers, was riding from Windsor Castle one summer morning when she came upon a stretch of heartland so flat, so open, so invitingly empty that she declared in words that would echo for 300 years that this ground was ideal for horses to gallop at full stretch. It wasn't for people to gather, not for society to be seen and to see. The original purpose was speed. Everything else, the hats, the hierarchy, the hidden doors, came later, layered on top like varnish over wood. Eventually, people forgot there was wood underneath all of it. On July 12, 1711, the official announcement appeared in the London Gazette. Her Majesty's plate, 100 guineas, to be run on the new heath at Ascot Common, near Windsor. The first meeting was held that August. The Queen arrived with what contemporary accounts describe as a brilliant suit. 7 horses ran the first race. A horse called Doctor, owned by the Duke of St. Albans, won. And in that simple fact, that the winner belonged to a duke, the pattern was established. This would not be a people's festival. This would be a theater of aristocratic presence, with the crown as both audience and author. For nearly a century, Ascot grew like a tree adding rings. each monarch adding their own layer of ritual. King George III established the Royal Enclosure in 1807. And this is the moment when the structure of exclusion became formal. Before 1807, there were simply better and worse places to stand. After 1807, there was an inside and an outside, and the wall between them was made of something stronger than stone. It was made of invitation. The Royal Enclosure was, and remains, invitation only. This is not a detail. This is the entire point. Anyone with sufficient funds can buy a ticket to the Queen Anne Enclosure. Anyone at all. But the Royal Enclosure requires something money cannot purchase directly. A sponsorship by two existing members, each of whom must have belonged for at least 4 years, and who must live at different addresses. A married couple counts as one referral. There are no exceptions. There are no appeals. There's only the discreet, polite sorting of human beings into those who belong and those who do not. The modern Ascot offers 4 distinct experiences, and the tragedy, or the genius, depending on your perspective, is that each group believes they're attending the real Ascot. The Windsor Enclosure, which has no dress code beyond a ban on replica sport jerseys, fills with young people drinking and laughing. They are visible evidence of Ascot democratization. They make excellent background for photographs. They also ensure that everyone in the Royal Enclosure feels extremely grateful for the walls that separate them. The royal family does not attend Ascot because they simply love horse racing. Though many of them do, they attend because Ascot is one of the most perfectly designed social sorting machines ever constructed, and they are its original architects. The democratization of Ascot, the addition of public enclosures, the media coverage, the televised procession, these are not concessions to modernity. They are structural necessities. The machine only works if there are enough people outside the walls to make the inside feel secret by comparison. The person who buys the most expensive available ticket, say a Queen Anne Enclosure pass at several £100s, believes they have purchased proximity to power. Well, they have not. They have purchased the illusion of proximity, which is itself a commodity. Their photographs will show hats and horses and the distant suggestion of royalty. What their photographs will not show, what their photographs cannot show, is the private lawn where members of the Royal Enclosure stand close enough to hear the jockeys breeding, the private restaurants where deals that shape industries are made over pink champagne, or the subtle, continuous calibration of who speaks to whom and for exactly how long. The ticket holder is not a guest. They are a utility. Their presence funds the maintenance of the walls. Their aspiration validates the exclusivity. Their photographs shared on social media serve a free advertising for an institution that has never needed to advertise. And yet, and this is the part that fascinates me, none of this is hidden. It is all visible if you know how to look. The walls are not high. The dress codes are published. The membership requirements are stated plainly on the website. The genius of Ascot is that it hides nothing and reveals nothing simultaneously. It operates on the assumption that most people will not look closely enough to see what is plainly in front of them. But to understand how to read these signals, to understand what separates the insider from the aspirant, we must begin with the most visible code of all, the one written not in rules, but in silk, straw, and thread. The dress code. The official dress code of the Royal Enclosure fits on a single page. I have read it. You can read it too, if you wish. It states that dresses must fall at the knee or below, that straps must be at least 1 inch wide, that fascinators are not permitted, only hats or headpieces, with a solid base of 4 inches or more. The midriffs must be covered, the sheer fabrics are forbidden. The men must wear black, gray, or navy morning dress with a waistcoat and tie. The top hats must be worn, but the official dress code is merely the fence. It tells you where the boundary is. It does not tell you what grows in the garden. Let me tell you what the dress code does not say. It does not say that there are 3 colors, and I'm being deliberate with this number. 3 colors that signal I have always been here. Navy, the particular navy of a British summer sky just before rain. Deep, slightly muted, carried off with the confidence of someone who has never had to check if a color is in fashion. Ivory, not white. White is for weddings and debutantes, and people who have not yet learned the distinction. Ivory carries the patina of age even when the garment is new. And the 3rd color, a particular shade of dusty rose, or shell pink, that has no equivalent in fast fashion, a color that exists only in houses with names like Cornflower and Old Moss and my grandmother's sitting room. It does not say that the woman wearing a dress from Zara, that technically meets all requirements, correct length, correct strap width, correct coverage, will still be identifiable at 50 paces as someone who read the rules, rather than absorb them. The fabric will be too light, the construction will be too simple, the garment will obey the letter of the law, while completely missing its spirit, in the same way that a person can recite a prayer phonetically without speaking the language. The brands matter, but not in a way you're thinking. No one in Ascot is checking labels or logos, but they will certainly notice the structure of the garment itself, as if from thin air. Catherine Walker, the house that dressed Diana more than any other, remains the unspoken standard for women who understand that power is best expressed through precision. Alexander McQueen, particularly for the Princess of Wales, who wore a pleated red McQueen in 2023 that was the talk of the enclosure. Amelia Wickstead, whose suiting carries the particular stiffness of someone who grew up understanding that clothes are a form of citizenship. Ellie Saab, for moments of romantic grandeur, the princess wore a powder blue Saab in 2019 that looked like the stilled summer sky. Observe the princess's evolution. In 2016, she wore a white lace Dolce & Gabbana dress with a cream fascinator. Technically correct, but safe. The outfit of someone who has read the guidebook. By 2019, she arrives in that Ellie Saab powder blue, Philip Tracy hat, silver rosy pumps, carrying an Ellie Saab clutch. Every element in conversation with every other element. The outfit of someone who no longer needs the guidebook, because she has become part of the text itself. And then 2023, the red Alexander McQueen, the Philip Tracy hat in matching scarlet, the vintage Hermes Rio clutch, a discontinued piece from the 1990s. Impossible to buy new. The kind of object that signals, I did not purchase this yesterday. The Cezanne earrings. It is not merely an outfit. It is a thesis statement. But if we're speaking of Ascot fashion, we must speak of Princess Diana. She wasn't a perfect example. Perfection is boring, and institutions do not feel perfection. They manufacture it. Diana was interesting. Diana was dangerous. Diana understood something that I believe the rest of the family never fully grasped. That fashion at Ascot is not about following rules. It's about weaponizing them. Diana arrived at her first Ascot in 1980. Not yet a princess, not yet a wife, already more famous than most of the people she was curtsying to. Her purple and white checkered dress with lilac heels and matching wide brim hat was technically correct, almost schoolgirlish. But the cameras did not care about technical correctness. They cared about the 19-year-old girl who moved through the enclosure like she had already measured the walls and found them wanting. By 1986, she had learned the code completely. It wasn't a forced maneuver, but a playful love of expression. The black and white polka dot ensemble with matching saucer hat, a masterclass in monochrome that made everyone around her look like they were trying too hard. The cream peplum jacket and pencil skirt by Catherine Walker, the silhouette of a boardroom executive who happened to be also the future queen. She was dressing to remind everyone, and perhaps herself, that she was the most interesting person in any room that also contained the actual queen. And this brings me to the queen. Not the queen we have now. We will not speak of her in this episode. I mean Queen Elizabeth II. The queen who attended Ascot for 70 years, who missed only one meeting during her entire reign, 2020, when the world stopped, and who treated the event with the same seriousness she applied to state openings of Parliament. Queen Elizabeth understood something about dressing for Ascot that approached the philosophical. In her final decades, she wore Stuart Parvin almost exclusively for her Ascot appearances. Parvin, working with her dresser Angela Kelly, created outfits in colors so vivid they could be spotted from the opposite end of the grandstand. Lemon yellow, peacock blue, fuchsia, the extraordinary neon green she wore to occasions where she needed to be visible, because visibility for a monarch is a form of work. Her hats, created by Rachel Trevor Morgan, who held the royal warrant, were structural statements, never small, never apologetic, always with the confidence of someone who knows that the best hat at Ascot is the one that makes other people's hats feel underdressed. The Queen's Ascot wardrobe was not about fashion, it was about territory, about staking a claim of color and space in an environment where everyone else was contractually obligated to wear black, gray, or navy. The unspoken rules of Ascot dressing. Shoes first. A mid-height heel, never a stiletto on grass, never a platform. Platforms scream nightclub, and Ascot begins at noon. The heel must be slender, but stable. The kind of shoe that suggests you own land. A pointed shoe reads as more formal than a rounded one, but a rounded toe reads as more approachable. Choose based on your objective. The bag. Structured, never slouchy. The vintage Hermes Rio that the princess carried in 2023, discontinued, findable only through specialists like First Dibs, represents the ideal. It says, I have had this for years, or I know where to find things that other people do not. A clutch is preferred. A shoulder bag with a chain is acceptable if the chain is gold and delicate. A classic top-handle bag is also welcomed. Silver is acceptable, but less traditional. Anything with a logo is, well, we do not need to discuss what a logo signals. You already know. Gloves. Optional for women in most enclosures, but in the Royal Enclosure, a pair of ivory or navy leather gloves, wrist length, never longer, mark the wearer as someone who has read the older editions of the guidebook. They're the equivalent of speaking a dialect that has not been commonly used for 50 years, but is still understood by those who matter. Patterns. Florals are safe, too safe perhaps. Polka dots carry Diana's blessing and are therefore always permissible. Stripes require caution. Horizontal stripes on the wrong silhouette create visual turbulence. Geometric patterns read as continental. Acceptable, but signaling a different tradition. The truly initiated wear abstract florals that cannot be identified as any specific flower, and colors that cannot be found in nature, but seem to belong there anyway. And who can break the rules? The Queen could. The monarch, by definition, writes the rules and therefore may disregard them. Diana could, because she understood that breaking a rule perfectly is more impressive than following it adequately. A titled lady of a certain age may wear slightly eccentric millinery. The reward for decades of correct behavior is the license to be a little strange. Everyone else must obey or be identified as someone who does not yet understand that the rules are not restrictions. They are opportunities to demonstrate that you never needed them explained. Every single thoroughbred racehorse alive today, every single one, without exception, traces its lineage back to exactly 3 stallions, imported to England in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. This is pristine genetics. The Byerly Turk, captured according to legend at the Battle of Buda in 1686, a warhorse before he was a sire, his line preserved through Herod in the mid-18th century. The Byerly Turk's direct male line is nearly extinct today, a whisper, where once it was a shout. Though a few stallions still carry his banner, hidden deep in pedigrees like forgotten royalty in exile. The Godolphin Arabian, foaled in Yemen around 1724, given to the King of France, spotted pulling a cart in the streets of Paris by an Englishman named Edward Coke, who recognized what others had failed to see, purchased, brought to England, and eventually passed to the Earl of Godolphin Small. Headstrong, considered inferior to the larger European horses of his era, and yet, when finally allowed to cover mares, he produced Laugh and Dancade, then champions beyond counting. His grave marker still lies in the passageway at Wendlebury, and if you visit, you will find fresh flowers there, placed by people who understand that greatness is not always obvious upon first inspection. And the Darley Arabian, purchased in Aleppo, Syria in 1704 by Thomas Darley, an Englishman trader and emissary of Queen Anne herself, exchanged a shipment of rifles in what may be the most consequential arms deal in today's history of sport. The Darley Arabian stood at stud in Yorkshire until his death at 30, and today 95% of all thoroughbred racehorses carry his Y chromosome. 95%. One stallion, 3 centuries of genetic dominance. But pedigree alone does not make a winner. This is the mistake that newcomers make. They look at the bloodline chart the way a social climber looks at a guest list, searching for famous names. A horse from impeccable lineage can still be mediocre, and a horse from modest patronage can still be extraordinary. What the bloodline provides is probability, not certainty. It is the blueprint. As the great trainer Bart Cummings once said, the individual is the final product. So what makes a winning bloodline then? It is 3 things, again with the pattern. Physical conformation, the angle of the shoulders, the length of the back, the depth of the hard griff, the quality of the bone. A thoroughbred's heart weighs roughly 4 times what an ordinary horse's heart weighs. This is literal and measurable, the organ of endurance scaled to mythic proportions. Then, temperament, the willingness to run not merely when asked, but when exhausted, when frightened, when every instinct says, stop. The third, the thing that cannot be bred, but can only be inherited through generations of winners. The knowledge of how to win. Horses born into stables where victory is routine learn victory as a language. They absorb it through the walls of their stalls, through the confidence of their handlers, through the accumulated certainty that they are simply the kind of horse that wins. Is it the physical features? Yes. Is it born into generations of winning horses? Yes. Is it simply a horse born into a chosen stable with proper history? Yes. It is all of these things, layered and inseparable, nature and nurture wound together, like the double helix that carries the instructions. And at Ascot, where the best horse in the world compete, the bloodlines are not just records, they're resumes, they're predictions. They are, in their own way, the same thing as the guest list at the Royal Enclosure, a sorting system, older than the automobile, more precise than any written examination. There is a tradition at Ascot older than the dress code, older than the Royal Enclosure itself, older almost than the grandstand, the wager, the bet, the placing of money on the outcome of a contrast between animals whose bloodlines stretch back to the deserts of Arabia. The upper classes bet differently than you might imagine. This is not the lottery, no sudden, desperate dream of transformation. And it's also not the casino, no adrenaline, no spectacle of loss. The upper class wager at Ascot is a social act, a form of participation, a way of demonstrating that one understands the sport sufficiently enough to have an informed opinion. In the old days, and by old days I mean any time before the smartphone, the betting ring had its own language, tic-tac, a system of hand signals developed in the 19th century and preserved like a living fossil into the 21st. Men in white gloves, always white gloves for visibility, standing in the rails, flashing odds across the ring in a code that looked to the uninitiated like semaphore performed by obsessive compulsiveness. Odds of 9 to 4, both hands touching the top of the head. Odds of 10 to 10, fists together, right thumb extended upwards. Odds of 5 to 4, right hand touching left wrist. The signals had names: top of the head, cockle, wrist, double carpet, a vocabulary of gesture that excluded everyone who had not learned it young. The tic-tac men are nearly gone now. By 1999, only 3 remained on the southern tracks. The betting exchanges killed them. The smartphones killed them. The progression from secret knowledge to public information killed them. But something of their spirit remains in the way the upper classes still approach the wager, as informed opinion made tangible. When an aristocrat places a bet at Ascot, they're not merely hoping to win money, they are demonstrating discernment. The choice of a horse is based on knowledge of bloodlines, of track conditions, of jockey form, of trainer patterns. The size of a wager is calibrated to signal seriousness without desperation. A bet too large suggests need. A bet too small suggests indifference. The correct bet exists in the middle space, large enough to demonstrate engagement, modest enough to demonstrate that the outcome does not matter to one's financial survival. They study the form. They know which horses prefer firm ground and which prefer soft. They understand that a horse's performance at Newmarket in April may predict its performance at Ascot in June, but only if you know how to read the variables. They speak to trainers, to bloodstock agents, to the network of informed observers that constitutes the racing aristocracy. A parallel aristocracy, invisible to outsiders, functioning on its own system of introductions and invitations. The wager is never just about money. It is about belonging to a group of people who understand that the contest on the track is only the visible part of a much higher game. A game that begins in the breeding shed, continues throughout the yearling sales, develops in the training gallops at dawn, and resolves itself for a few seconds in front of 300,000 people who believe they're watching a horse race when they're actually watching the culmination of a 3-year conversation between genetics, money, and human ambition. The first thing to understand, and here's where I must be direct with you, is that institutions like Royal Ascot can smell desperation the way a horse smells fear. It is not a moral judgment. It is a sensory apparatus developed over 300 years of continuous operation. The person who arrives trying too hard, who has studied the dress code with the intensity of a bar exam candidate, who references the correct designers too quickly, who has the right clothes but the wrong relationship to them. This person is not rejected. Rejection would be cruel, and cruelty draws attention. They're simply not seen. They become background. They're the lovely wallpaper against which the real event takes place. Desperation manifests physically before it ever reaches language. The shoulders too tense, the smile held slightly too long, the gaze that darts to check if the right people are watching, the laugh that arrives half a second too early, the dress with a neckline worthy of a beach vacation. These are signals that humans have been reading since we lived in caves, and the people who have inhabited Ascot for generations have refined this reading to an art form. So how does one avoid this? The answer is both simple and impossibly difficult. One must stop wanting, not stop caring. Indifference is its own signal, and it reads as disrespect. But stop wanting from the institution. Stop wanting validation. Stop wanting access. Stop wanting to be admired and admitted to rooms that you have decided are important because they exclude you. The person who belongs at Ascot is the person who does not need Ascot, who attends because they find it pleasant, not because they find it necessary, who would equally be content at a garden party or a gallery opening or an afternoon alone with a book, because their sense of self is not borrowed from the rooms they're not permitted to enter. This is the paradox that destroys most social climbers. The harder you try to belong, the more completely you signal that you don't. Belonging is a byproduct of other qualities: confidence, curiosity, genuine interest in the people around you. a sense of humor about oneself, the ability to be present in a moment without calculating its social value. These qualities cannot be faked because they're not performances, they're ways of being. Practical advice then, for someone preparing for their first event of this caliber. First, dress correctly, but do not dress to impress. Dress to disappear into the standard. The goal is not to be the best dressed person in the enclosure. The goal is to be indistinguishable from someone who has dressed this way their entire life. If someone compliments you on your outfit, you have failed. Correct dress is invisible dress. It signals that you did not think about your clothes this morning because you don't need to think about them. This is the opposite of fashion, and it's the only thing that matters in rooms like these. Second, speak less than you wish to, and listen more than you think is necessary. The person who asks 3 good questions and listens to the answer will be remembered more fondly than the person who delivers a monologue about their own achievements. The upper classes value wit, but they value discretion more. They have been trained since birth to regard self-promotion as the mark of the tradesman. Someone who must advertise because no one would otherwise know they exist. Third, and this is the most important, provide value to the establishment rather than seeking value from it. What does this mean in practice? It means being interested in the races themselves, not merely the spectacle. It means knowing enough about bloodlines to have an informed conversation with someone who breeds horses. It means remembering names, sending follow-up notes, offering connections where you have them without expecting reciprocation. It means approaching the institution not as a consumer, meaning, what can I get from this, but as a contributor, meaning, what can I add to this? Institutions like Ascot don't need more people who want to take photographs. They need people who understand that the photographs represent something deeper. They need people who appreciate the 3-century continuity, the bloodlines of the horses, the structure of the social code, the precise calibration of tradition and adaptation that keeps the machine functioning. They need people who can see the invisible structure and respect it without being destroyed by it. And if you cannot provide these things, if you find the entire apparatus absurd, which it absolutely is, and oppressive, which it certainly can be, then the most powerful signal you can send is to simply not attend, to build your own rooms, to create your own traditions, to understand that the ultimate belonging is belonging to yourself so completely that no invitation, however exclusive, can add or subtract from what you already are. I want to leave you with one final thought, and it returns us to where we began, to Queen Anne on her horse, to the stretch of heartland where all of this started. She said the ground was ideal for horses to gallop at full stretch. She did not say it was ideal for people to sort each other into hierarchies. She did not say it was ideal for the construction of invisible walls that would persist for 3 centuries. She said it was ideal for speed, for the pure, uncomplicated, breathtaking spectacle of animals running as fast as they possibly can. Everything else was added. Everything else can be questioned. And if you take nothing else from this episode, take this. The most powerful person at Ascot is not the one in the finest carriage, or the one with the largest wager, or even the one wearing the crown. The most powerful person is the one who can look at the entire magnificent, beautiful, terrible machinery and see it clearly. See what it is, what it does, who it serves, who it excludes, and still find something genuine to appreciate in the thunder of hooves on summer grass. The 3 stallions started this. 3 colors signal belonging. 3 thresholds must be crossed. 3 centuries of accumulated meaning. The pattern is there for those who look. And on rewatch, because I believe you will rewatch this certain episode, demands it. You will find the echoes I have hidden. The repetitions were not accidental. The structure beneath the words that mirror the structure of the place itself. The Royal Ascot is many things. A horse race, a fashion show, a social sorting machine, a 300-year-old tradition, a living museum of British hierarchy, a beautiful afternoon in June. And beneath all of these things, it is a question that each person who walks through its gates must answer for themselves. Do I want to be inside the walls, or do I want to be free of them? The walls are lower than they appear. They have always been lower than they appear. And on the other side of them, on the grass where the horses run at full stretch, there is a kind of freedom that no enclosure can contain. I am the curated oracle. I observe so you might see. And as always, 10 steps ahead, darling.